In June of 1999, a bizarre wave of terror swept across Europe. It started in a quiet school in Belgium. Dozens of children cracked open fresh, ice-cold cans of Coca Cola during their lunch break. Within hours, the school was a scene of absolute chaos. Kids were collapsing in the hallways, vomiting uncontrollably, and being rushed to emergency rooms by a fleet of ambulances. Within days, the mystery sickness spread across borders. It hit France, Germany, and Luxembourg. People were suddenly terrified of the most famous drink on earth. What followed was the largest product recall in Coca-Cola's 113-year history, resulting in over 17 million crates of soda being seized, burned, and destroyed. How did a company famous for selling happiness in a bottle accidentally distribute literal poison to millions of people? It wasn't a terrorist attack, and it wasn't a rival company sabotage. It was a catastrophic failure inside a hidden factory, combined with a corporate cover-up that almost destroyed the brand forever. What followed was the largest and most expensive product recall in Coca-Cola's entire 113-year history. European governments completely panicked. They ordered an absolute unconditional purge of the beverage. In a matter of days, over 17 million crates of soda, hundreds of millions of cans and bottles were forcefully seized from store shelves, confiscated from warehouses, crushed, and systematically destroyed. Entire countries literally threw their soda supplies into incinerators. How did a global corporate empire built on the promise of selling happiness in a bottle accidentally distribute what the public believed was literal poison to millions of consumers? The initial suspicion was terrifying. Was this a highly coordinated terrorist attack? Was it a malicious sabotage operation conducted by a rival beverage company? As investigators scrambled for answers, the company's stock price plummeted overnight, instantly erasing billions of dollars in corporate valuation. The global economy shook, and all eyes turned directly to Coca-Cola's massive world headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. To find out the truth, European health investigators rushed straight to the source, the two major regional bottling plants responsible for these specific batches of soda. One plant was located in Antwerp, Belgium. The other was across the border in Dunkirk, France. What they uncovered inside those complex industrial walls wasn't a malicious criminal plot. Instead, it was an unbelievable, simultaneous comedy of operational errors that created a toxic chemical nightmare. At the French plant in Dunkirk, investigators discovered a major health code failure involving the everyday wooden pallets used to transport empty aluminum cans. The pallets had been heavily treated with a highly potent, toxic industrial antifungal preservative chemical called phenol. Due to improper storage and damp conditions, this chemical vaporized and contaminated the exterior of the cans. When the cans were filled and sealed on the line, the toxic chemical residue remained baked right into the metal rim. Customers were unknowingly licking trace amounts of a industrial toxicant right off the container. But the disaster didn't stop there. At the Belgian plant in Antwerp, a completely separate, independent manufacturing breakdown was happening at the exact same time. The factory had accidentally accepted a highly defective batch of low-grade carbon dioxide gas used to carbonize the soft drinks. This gas was heavily contaminated with volatile sulfur compounds, specifically carbonyl sulfide. This explains why the schoolchildren immediately smelled a foul, nauseating rotten egg odor the instant they popped open their cans. Coca-Cola was accidentally delivering chemical-coated cans from France and foul sulfur-contaminated gas from Belgium to the exact same market simultaneously. But right here is where this bizarre corporate history takes a staggering, mind-bending twist that most people completely forget. As international independent toxicologists began running comprehensive laboratory tests on the contaminated cans, they discovered something absolutely shocking. The actual levels of phenol and sulfur compounds on the cans were incredibly small. Biologically speaking, the concentration of these chemicals was so low that it was practically impossible for them to cause severe organ distress, violent vomiting, or long-term poisoning. So, if the chemicals weren't strong enough to poison anyone, Why were thousands of people legitimately suffering in hospital beds? The answer lies in one of the most powerful and terrifying phenomena in human psychology: mass sociogenic illness, commonly known as mass hysteria. The psychological mechanism is triggered when a community is under extreme stress, and a hypervisible event like a group of children falling ill from a foul-smelling drink creates an intense collective panic. The fear itself manifests real, physical, somatic symptoms. People weren't faking their severe stomach cramps and dizziness. Their brains were literally forcing their bodies to become sick out of pure psychological terror, supercharged by the media. With the scientific facts pointing toward an explosive mix of mild contamination and massive psychological panic, a competent corporation could have managed the narrative and calmed the public. Instead, pure corporate arrogance took over the executive boardrooms. The reigning global CEO of Coca Cola, a man named Douglas Ivester, made what is now studied in business schools as one of the single worst public relations mistakes in history. He chose to completely ignore the European public. He refused to fly to Europe, remaining isolated inside his luxurious office in Atlanta, believing the issue was beneath him. When Coca-Cola finally broke its agonizing silence days later, they made the situation infinitely worse. They issued a cold, sterile statement that essentially told the public the entire crisis was minor, dismissing the thousands of hospitalized children as simply experiencing mass hysteria. By telling terrified parents that their sick children were just imagining their suffering, Coca-Cola insulted an entire continent. European governments were absolutely furious. They immediately extended the bans, seized assets, and forced the company into complete public humiliation. The executive fallout was absolute. Under immense pressure from furious board members and devastated investors, CEO Douglas Ivester was forced to step down and resign in disgrace just months after the incident. The financial cost of the disaster was staggering. It cost Coca-Cola over $100 million up front just to execute the physical recall and safe disposal of the products. But the true damage to their brand reputation and market trust in Europe cost billions more, requiring a multi-year effort of aggressive marketing campaigns, massive free product giveaways, and an entirely overhauled, hyper-strict global safety standard to get people to trust the brand again. The legendary 1999 crisis serves as a permanent, haunting reminder for every major company on Earth. Even the largest, richest corporate empires are away from total collapse.